I became a New York City police officer basically. I thought that it would be a decent job to have with a decent benefit package. I mean, I had no plans or intentions on doing it for a career. I figured I'd do it for a year or two and then go on to something else. I had my degree, so I had planned on going to law school. And then I stayed on and, made a career out of it. I did about 22 and a half years in the New York City Police Department. I started in 1982 and I retired in 2004, where I started here at Carl Place. I originally was assigned to Bushwick, Brooklyn. I spent about 6 years in Bushwick, Brooklyn on patrol as a New York City police officer, rank of police officer. And I got interviewed to go to the range to teach firearms, and after about 6 years, and I went up there, and that's where I ended my career. I retired out of that unit. In September 11th, 2001, I was teaching in South Jamaica in a precinct. I was teaching firearms law, which was what my specialty was. I taught firearms law to a bunch of captains. And I had just about taken a break to go talk to a couple of buddies of mine that were in the emergency service unit of NYPD's emergency service unit, which was attached to this precinct where I was. And my friend Gary came down. He says, "Why don't you come upstairs for a cup of coffee?" He said, "We're watching a TV. A plane just flew into a building." And at that time, I guess everybody, including myself, thought it was just a small plane. We had no idea what was going on. So I said, "All right, I'll be up. I just want to dismiss these guys that I have here." I was taking a break. And I came up and I was having a cup of coffee and a corn muffin. I remember it like it was yesterday. And the second plane hit the building, second building. Immediately at that point we knew this was something special. About a half hour after that, I think the emergency service unit, the guy I was with, cop I was with, Gary, got a call, and they said that it was a suspected terrorist attack, and everybody was going to be mobilized. At that point, I went downstairs, and my initial original unit, which was based up in the Bronx, called me and said, "Sit tight, we don't know what we're doing. We think there was a terrorist attack on the Trade Center." Emergency service units throughout the city, NYPD emergency service units, were all deployed down there. I was then told, "Listen, come back to the range. We're going to be deployed down to the Trade Center with heavy weapons," because we were all heavy weapons qualified, being from the range. So that's what we did. I had to make my way back up to the outdoor range, which was in the Bronx, which was the basis of my unit, and which was no small task, because they had at that point started to close the bridges down. So I had to go across the Throgs Neck Bridge. I had to ID myself, get up there. We all mustered up there, and then they put us on buses and brought us down to the Trade Center with heavy weapons. When we originally got down there, I mean, it was just every single sense was just assaulted all at once. I mean, the smell was arid, thick, smoke everywhere. I mean, you didn't know where to look, where to, didn't know what to do. It was just so overwhelming at that point. We didn't get down till later on that evening, which is way after the second tower came down. But again, it was almost like an eerie quiet down there, and just dust and papers all over the place. That's what I remember about it. And we were deployed with heavy weapons. And a rumor started to get around that there might be a second terrorist attack. What they were saying was that they were going to draw in all the first responders, and then another attack was going to happen, and we might all be killed. So we had that in the back of our minds. I think I spent about 16 hours there that day. We went home, and I remember my wife saying that my uniform stunk. It was so full of smoke and everything else. We went down the second day, same thing, heavy weapons. Some of us were deployed to the bucket brigade trying to go through, find bodies, find anybody that was surviving. I mean, if you saw the wreckage, it would have been hard to find, think that anybody could possibly have survived that. Then a series of interesting occurrences happened to me personally. I was down there about a week. We spent about 12 to 14 hours down there, and you went home, you were back down there the next day. And my commanding officer called me and said, listen, I need you back at the outdoor range. And the reason he needed me back and a couple of other firearm instructors back at the outdoor range was that, if you remember, Mayor Giuliani, Rudolph Giuliani, was the current mayor. He was leaving, and the new mayor, Mike Bloomberg, was coming in. So the new mayor had picked his security team, which consisted of a bunch of NYPD cops, sergeants, lieutenants, and they all needed to be trained on the heavy weapons because they all had to be heavy weapons qualified or qualified for some of the heavy weapons to be part of his security team. And I fought it vigorously. I wanted to be down there with everyone else, just trying to help out at the trade center, to the point where he almost threatened me, with suspension. He says, "I need you back here. I need you and a bunch of the other guys to come back here and start the training." So subsequently, I did that and spent about a month and a half, possibly 2 months up there. The training took place, over 5 days, and we did all the training for his team. When that was all finished, and I wanted to go back down there. There was more stuff to be done, so I ended up staying up at the outdoor range. I only got down to the trade center after that, maybe 1 or 2 times. We also were deployed with heavy weapons and Office of Management and Budget, OMAP. That was they had a headquarters, temporary headquarters set up there, and that's where the mayor was going, the governor was going, the police commissioner, and they had what they call the hard room, which no one was allowed into unless you were credentialed, where they stayed when no one else was around. We were outside with heavy weapons guarding that, so we also had responsibility for that. And the interesting thing about it was, the reason I bring that part of it up, that I was up at the outdoor range the entire time, mostly after about a week, was that I look back on it now, and I think my CO basically saved my life. So anyway, what I was starting to say is he basically saved my life, because I wasn't down there for the entire time. A lot of the people that were down there suffered a lot of debilitating and unusual injuries as a result of as being down there and breathing all the whatever was in the air. My partner, Tommy, 4 years later, never smoked, took care of himself. They ended up taking out one of his lungs. So, and there was a number of different, another one of my friends from the outdoor range, at 36 years old, ended up with prostate cancer. Another one ended up with nasal cancer, and a whole bunch of different things. And I was sort of spared that as a result of not being down there. One of the interesting things, another sort of interesting thing I remember when I was down there, was that there was someone, I think, from the military unit that was in a full body suit, one of those contained suits with an oxygen mask and his hood and the whole thing. And he comes by and he's handing out these paper masks, and he's going, "Here, take this paper mask." And I looked up at him and I said, "Well, shouldn't I have what you have on?" He goes, "Nah." He says, I'm down here for 8, 9 hours, 10 hours at a time." I said, "Well, I've been down here for 14, shouldn't I have that instead of that paper mask?" Which I thought was kind of funny, they had these self-contained units, and they were down there for a limited time, and everybody else, the cops, the firemen, all the first responders were down there for a lot longer than that, and they didn't have that. They wanted to hand you a paper mask, which we found out later was a hot knife through butter. It really didn't do anything. So, yeah, so basically, looking back at it now, I see my CO unknowingly basically saved mine and a bunch of other guys' lives. We didn't have to breathe a lot of that crap in. You know, and it's even today, it's still a raw emotion. I lost a lot of friends, you know, guys that I had known. One of the individuals, one of the guys that I knew went through my academy class with me. His name was Tommy Langone. That name may sound familiar because he was a New York City emergency service cop. His brother was a fireman. They both died. So those parents lost two. And I had seen Tommy the Friday before. He was at the outdoor range for training. And I said to him, I says, Tommy, we're getting close to retirement. What do you think? He goes, I'm never going to retire. You know, he loved the job that much. And I don't think he would have retired. He would have gone till the last day. He was one of the ones that died. You know, tower came down along with his partner, Paul Talty. They were found together, emergency service unit. So that was really my, you know, my whole experience and recollection of what occurred at that time. I've not been back. I've spoken with a number of my friends. A few have gone back. Few of us have not gone back. I don't know. It's a mixture of sadness and anger that makes me not want to go back there. So eventually, maybe, but you know, not yet.
Do you attend any ceremonies on 9/11 annually?
I did a couple. I haven't in a number of years. Yes.
Okay. Some people in the middle school and high school weren't even born when 9/11 occurred. If there was one thing you think they should know, what would it be?
That's a tough one. You know, I think they should know that exactly what happened. This shouldn't be something that should ever be forgotten, that this was in fact an Islamic attack. I think that that should be sort of put into curriculum so no one forgets it, and no one, and everyone sort of understands and is brought up with what happened. That was an event that changed the thinking and ideology in this country. We are no longer the same innocent country that we were before 9/11. And I think that has to be, you know, fostered and make people understand how serious and the sacrifices that people made. And I think that's one thing that should be taught. Basically it. You know, like I said, it's still pretty much a raw emotion, you know, for me. I didn't think it would be.